In this video, we're going to look at functions. Functions are blocks of code that allow you to break a problem up into smaller pieces, and it allows you to retain code that you might want to use in the future, and that's just called software reuse. We'll begin with this program outline, where in this case we have the usual preliminary stuff, and we are going to add some functions. Now, a function has three parts. Let's scroll down and look at the bottom. This is past the main program. Here that terminates the main program. And I have put some comments below the main program, and these comments are going to describe a function that we're going to write down here. So first of all, the first thing you need is the body of the function itself, that is the block of code that will do the work. So those are going to be placed at the bottom of the program below the main function. The other thing that you must have is what's called a function prototype. Now, the function prototype is just the first line of your function, which has the name of the function and any arguments that it will need. And this must go up here right before the main program. So here's the main program, and above that you put your function prototypes, and you'll see what those are shortly. I will point out that these pound includes that you've been seeing for some time, those are header files that just contain the function prototypes for all the built-in functions that we've been using, like printf, scanf, pow, and so on. The third thing that you need for your function is a reference or a call to the function. So we will place the call to the function within the body of the code of the main program. All right, now given that, let's scroll down and let's write the body of the code for this function. And this is just going to be a simple function that's going to print out some information to the screen. Okay, so this function will print out the header for a homework problem. No data is passed into this function. It's just going to be called, and it will write out this information to the screen. Whenever you're writing a function, then you need to give it a type. And in this case, we're just going to use integer as the type for our function. And this will look a lot like the main program you've been writing. Then you give your function a name, which I'm going to call this print header, print underscore header. And then in parentheses, you list any arguments that the function might have. Now, as we've been doing with main, we don't have any arguments that will be passed to the function. So it's just going to be empty parentheses. Then we delineate the body of code with the left curly brace and the right curly brace. Now, so far this looks a great deal like the main function that we've been doing. It just has a different name. Now, inside the block of code, we're just going to write the C statements that we need for our function to do what it needs to do. Now, since this is our first function, let's print some information out to indicate that we have entered the function. So let's put a printf statement here, and let's just say entering function print header. Okay, entering function print header, period, a backslash n, a double quote, a right print, and a semicolon. Okay, so that will just indicate whenever we call the function that it's about to do what we want it to do. Now, inside this function itself, we just want to print some information to the screen, like I said. Okay, so it has a series of printf statements. Okay, so let's do a printf, okay, double quote, and let's print some course information. Okay, so let's do course. So it's like a little listing of things. Let's put a couple of tabs there, and let's call this CS102. Okay, summer 2015 is when I did this video. Okay, period, backslash n, double quote, right print, semicolon, and another printf to print something else to the screen. Okay, so let's put our name. Another couple of tabs, and put your name here. We'll just make up a name. Sam Jones, backslash n. Let's put a period there. Period, backslash n, double quote, right print, semicolon. Another printf. And if this were a homework assignment, we might want to print this to the screen. Okay, assignment. And let's give the problem and the page number. So let's suppose this is problem 1 on let's put a comma there. problem 1, comma, page 300, period, \n, double quote, right paren, semicolon. And let's suppose that's the only thing that this is going to do. So if we had a homework problem and we wanted this information to go to the screen, then this function would do that. Now at the bottom, let's just indicate that we are leaving the function. Printf printf, get that right. Okay, printf, exiting function print header, period, \n, double quote, right paren, semicolon. All right, now that is all we want the function to do. But whenever you have a function, you should always have a return statement. Okay, so we need to put a return here. Notice it's blue, so it's a reserved word. And in this case, we don't really do any calculations with the function, and so we need to return an integer. So let's just return 0, and let's put a semicolon there. So this gives you the structure of a function. And all your functions will have the same structure, even though they will do different things. Okay, you must give it a type, you must give it a name, and the name must follow the naming conventions for variables. Then you have the body of your function to do whatever you want it to do. Do calculations, write out stuff, find something with if statements, whatever it may be. And then at the bottom, if you have something to return, we'll return it here, and we'll see that shortly. But in this case, we only want to print this to the screen and then return 0. All right, so that completes the function. Now, if you scroll back up and look at the comments that I put in, then you'll see that I've got the name, the type for the function, the inputs, in this case none, it returns 0, and then we have a short description. All right, so whenever you're writing your functions, you should provide a brief description of the function, including the inputs and the returns. All right, now in order to complete this and call the function, we need to provide the function prototype. The easiest way to do that is to just make a copy of the first line of the function, which I'll do here with Control-C. Then I will scroll up, and we'll paste this at the top before main, where I have the comment, you must define function prototypes here. So I'll paste that in. And here you must add a semicolon. All right, so that will complete the function prototype for print header. So that's an easy thing to do. Then, in the main program, if we want to call that function, we need to refer to it. So we just call the function, which is called print_header. And even though it has no information to go in, we still have to include the parentheses, as we do with all functions. So here's the function call. There's the function prototype. And at the bottom, we had the body of the function itself. So that's pretty easy to do. Now, let's, just given what we have, let's go ahead and see if we can build this function and run the program. The function, okay, the program has built, so now let's run it. And here's our output window. So let's follow what has happened here. All right, so we are in the main program, and we write out the main function here. So we see that on the screen. And then we call function print header there. At this point, the execution transfers to the function, and it must complete before we come back to the main program and print out that we're back in the main function. Okay, so we go to the function, and let me scroll down so you can see the code for that. And we print out these statements. Okay, entering function print header, and we print out the course, the name, the assignment. And then we exit the function, and we go back to the main function again. Okay, so in this case, we call the function, it executes the statements from top to bottom, as you see here, and then we return to the main program. Once we get back to the main program, we are going to print out the statement back in the main function again, and we're going to add another call here. So we'll see both of these lines printed out. And that's what we have. Okay, so we're now back in the main function again, and we print that out twice, and we are at the bottom of our main program. So that's what we call the flow of control. The main program will call the function, and it will transfer control to that function. the function will execute all that it has to do. It'll do all of its work, and once it's finished, it will return to the main program, and then the main program will pick up where it left off. Right? So that's the flow of control, and there you see the three different parts of a function. You need the body, the prototype, and the call to the function. Now, let's make this a little bit more interesting. This function really didn't do very much. We called it, we had it output some information, and then we returned. All right, we could have put that in the main program and not had to use a function. But let's see how now we can write another function, and we can have it do different things, or have at least different information each time we need to call it. Now, as before, we are going to put the body of the function down here. And once you are ready to write your functions, then you can just stack them up below the main program. So we've done one function already, and then we'll just follow that one with the next function that we're going to do. And we're going to call it printHeader2. It's also going to be a type integer. But this time, we're going to have inputs. We're going to send information into the function. In the previous example, we had problem 1 and page 300, and that never changed. So this function wouldn't be very useful unless we were only doing problem 1 on page 300. But let's alter it. Let's do another function so that we can pass in the problem number and what page it's on. And we're going to call that function printHeader2. Now, to save some time, let's take this function that we just did. Okay, let's highlight this entire function, and let's make a copy of it, because I'm going to be doing something very similar here. Okay, then let's place our cursor below the description for function printHeader2, and we'll paste this in. Now look carefully as I'm going to do some edits. Okay, this function is called printHeader2, so I need to put a 2 there. And let's edit the print statements in here. Okay, so we're going to be entering printHeader2, and we're exiting printHeader2 at the bottom. Okay, now we'll come back and change this other stuff, this line in particular, in just a minute. All right, this function is going to accept two numbers, the problem number and the page number. So we need to provide what are called arguments for that. And we provide arguments by giving them a type and a name, and they go in the parentheses here. All right. So in this case, for printHeader2, we need two arguments. And to keep it simple, I'm just going to make those integer, and let's call that problem. So an integer variable problem, comma, and for the page number, we have another integer variable, which I'm just going to call page. All right. So now our function is able to accept a couple of input values. So we can call the function with problem 8 on page 20 or problem 24 on page 418. It doesn't matter. Okay, we'll send in the problem and we'll send in the page number. Now, in order to use this information, we need to change the body of code here. Okay, so let's suppose we still have the first two lines. Okay, the course number is fine, the name is fine, but we want to change this. So instead of saying problem 1, we're going to pass that in, and it's in variable problem. Okay, so I don't put the problem there. I put a placeholder. I do a %d. Okay, so that'll print out. That's a holding print specifier for the problem number. And for the page number, we do another %d. Then we're going to use the variables to fill in that data. So the first one is the problem. So we have a variable for that, comma, and the next one is the page. All right. So we're using now these two variables as inputs to the function, and the function will use them here. And of course, it takes the place of those two print specifiers here for the problem and the page number. Great. So now our little function can print out any number and any page. To complete this, we need to have the function prototype. So let's make a copy of that first line, and we scroll to the top, and we paste it in where function prototypes go, and don't forget to add the semicolon. All right. Third thing we need to do is to call the function. So we're going to put our call to the function here, and it's going to be printHeader2. And this time the function is expecting 2 inputs, and we must give it 2 inputs. All right, so let's suppose that in this case we want to do problem number 5, comma, and it's on page 302, right paren and a semicolon. So when you call a function that has arguments and you want to pass information into that function, then these must match up. So 5 is going to be the problem number, and 302 will be the page. When we call the function, 5 is passed in, and it is accepted by this variable problem. And in our example, page is going to take on the value 302. So when we print out those two values with this printf statement, we'll print out 5 and 302. All right, so let's build this and prove that it does work. Okay, we have successfully compiled. Now let's run this program. And we're going to call both functions. Okay, so here's our output window. And you can see what we have. Let's make this a bit smaller. Okay, so reading from the top to the bottom, let's scroll up and look at the main program again. Okay, I think we can see everything there. All right, so we're going to print out the main function as we did before. And then we've got the block of stuff for the first function, print header, which just prints out the course, the name, the assignment. We exit function, print header. And then we come back to the main program and we say we're back in the main program, the main function again. All right, now we're going to call print header 2, and we're going to send it the values 5 and 302. All right, so reading further down, entering function print header 2, we have the course again, we have the name again, but this time notice the assignment has problem 5 on page 302. So the information that we passed in is now being used by the function, and it's output to the screen. All right. Now please remember that whenever you specify what we call the dummy arguments here, and we call them dummy arguments because they don't have a value until you call the function. So whenever you call the function, you must match the inputs to these dummy variables. So problem has to be there as an integer, and page has to be there as an integer. So when you call the function back in the main program, you must send it these two arguments, and they must be in the correct order. So the first one, 5, will match up with problem. The second one will match up with the page number. So hopefully that's clear. All right, then to finish this up, we go back and we look at the output. We're going to exit function print header 2, and we're back in the main program again, which is here, and then we just terminate. So this example now gives you all at least the mechanics of how to use a function. It shows you the body that you need to write. It shows you about where to put the function prototypes and what they are, and also how to call the function as shown here in the main program. This terminates your introduction to functions.